Thank you so much, Joshua V. Barr, for being with us here today. I've really been looking forward to talking with you. All the way back in April, we had you scheduled to come into the library and tell your Spark story. And because of COVID-19, it's taken us all the way until December to be able to sit down with you and talk about your Spark. And I've followed a lot of your work, your articles, your speaking event I saw you at with Dolores Huerta last year or earlier this year. And I think that it inspired a lot of people in the room, including me. And I've really been inspired by your work. And so today I wanted to get to know you better and allow people to get to know you better and learn about where your passion and your energy comes from. What is inspiring you to do the work that you're doing in Des Moines right now? So if we can just start with that, what is your spark for being involved?
So, I have a community spark and I have a personal spark. The community spark really deals in my background, and I am a descendant of African slaves, people who were enslaved as Africans here in the United States. And my background is I'm from South Carolina. I was born in Sumter, South Carolina, but my mother's side originates from Kershaw County and my father's side originates from Williamsburg County. In the Williamsburg County, Kingstree area, I still have family members that live in the area where my family was enslaved. But, one of the things growing up, they always teach you is that, especially as a child of the 80s, I am 12 years from when integration really happened. I was born 12 years after integration really happened. So my parents were a part of the integration generation. They really ran through and tried to take advantage of the opportunities in 1968 when segregation officially ended with the Civil Rights Act of 1968. And so they were 18 years old when Martin Luther King died, when that act passed. And so collectively, I'd always been taught, get your education and everything will be okay. The whole American dream, go to school, graduate, get a job, buy a house, get married, in some order like that. But then I was fortunate enough to go to Colombia, South America. And I ran into a lot of people who were essentially looked just like me. They spoke Spanish and they were dirt poor. And that really opened my eyes to something. But not only were they poor, but they were actually poor and happy, which is different from the United States, what they teach you. But lived there for 2 years, came back, I started working as a civil rights attorney for the state of South Carolina. And part of that was going out and speaking to people about civil rights, what their civil rights laws are. And I'll be honest, when I went and spoke with communities that look like me, a lot of them pushed back on some of the things that we talked about as far as Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement and the doors that it opened. And many people were like, well, actually I had more opportunity when we were segregated. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, this black person owned the movie theater, this black person owned the ice making machine, they had these stores, et cetera. And then it's like, once the doors opened, we were essentially shut out from, although the doors were open for us to enter into white institutions, but they shut out for us to continue on with our business. And so you see these communities, these impoverished communities, and many of these communities I know, and you started to see like, wow, there is some truth to this. Like we've lost some economic power. And with that, Dylan Roof, Walter Scott happened in 2015 where a police officer shot him in the back. And then Dylan Roof happened a few months later where he went into the Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, killed 9 people. And a big part of that was we thought we were going to have a discussion on race. We thought that there was going to be some real movement towards addressing the racial concerns that we had been kicking the can down the road from Emmett Till to Rodney King to Trayvon Martin, et cetera. And we thought we were going to have a real conversation. But all of a sudden, as we were moving towards the discussion, then all of a sudden the Confederate flag on the State House grounds became offered as the panacea to address racial concerns. Although David Beasley had tried to take it down before, probably about 15 years before, and was shunned for trying to do that. But in the midst of that, they did decide to take the flag down. But before the flag actually went down, there was a lot of debate about it. And my office, the Civil Rights Office, was right across the street from the State House grounds. So right after work, I just walk across the street to the State House and see people debate and fight about it. And the first day, I went. It was a really chaotic. People were kind of fighting and et cetera. I guess the next day or day 3, the state troopers came out and they, kind of did a little bit of crowd control. But I had a state badge, so I was able to move across between the people who were pro keeping the flag and people who were pro keeping the flag and people who wanted the flag to go away. And I got to talk to a lot of those people on both sides. And with the people who wanted the flag to come down, my first question was not, why do you want the flag to come down? It was really, why are you here today? And their answer wasn't, I hate this flag, that drives me insane. It was like, I lost my job, or I'm struggling, I have poor housing, I just got out of jail, or some other issue that was beyond the flag. And they were like, man, I just needed some place to express my anger with the way things are in this country and in this world and in this state. And you were like, dang, all right, that's pretty deep, hearing the people's struggle and their challenges and why they were there. And then I'd cross over to the other side, talk with them and like, hey, why are you here? And most of these people were, white males. And many of them stated like, hey, I'm a person and I'm poor and I don't have much. And man, if they take this flag, what else do I have? I don't have much. And so understanding that a lot of people had an issue that was much bigger than the flag. And a lot of it was tied and rooted in economics, and really understanding that it doesn't matter if I'm allowed to sit at the lunch counter with someone else if I can't afford the meal. It doesn't matter if I now have access to buy a home that my family had been denied of generations post enslavement, but even during enslavement, if I was never given the economic education and economic opportunity in order to buy the home. And you're sitting there looking at it, and not just with persons of African descent, but European Americans as well, who were sold that, you're white, so everything's going to be all right. And they're looking at their situation and recognizing, things aren't as well as they've been sold. And so that sparked me to really understand the connectiveness of everything and how economics ties to it. And I think King says it best. He says that the initial phase of the civil rights movement was a struggle for decency. Treat me like a human being. And then the second phase of that is really a phase of economics. We live in a capitalist system where the dollar is king, and now it's time to really sign that check that really came back insufficient funds in order to address the economics, not just of African Americans, but of all people, of people, of whites living in the Appalachians, of people of indigenous ancestry who had their lands taken from them, persons who were enslaved, et cetera, and really address the economics. And I think when you look at where we are today in regards to this pandemic and how millions upon millions of people have lost their jobs, 20 million people, and we're giving them a $600 check as a stimulus check. And I don't know about you, but $600 don't go very far in stimulating. Not when the rent is $1,000, not when it costs, on average about $500 to feed a family of 4. It's actually a little more than that, so my numbers are off. It costs me with a family of 2 about $500 worth to feed, but a family of 4, it's definitely inching up to the $1,000 mark. And so this is an economic country, and we hold up King, as in education and in government, as this person who really fought for what the Constitution was about. But King had a much bigger message with the Poor People's Campaign that he never got to start. And I would say, that's that community spark, recognizing that collectively this affects me. Because again, growing up in Sumter, South Carolina, I saw a number of young people that I went to high school and middle school with on my first day as a lawyer, walking through the courthouse, seeing them in chains and in prison uniforms, being arrested and going before the judge. And that could have been me if it wasn't for some of the privilege I had growing up in a two-parent household, but also just not making as many decisions I couldn't bounce back from. And so I understand that I'm very fortunate. And so I don't want the next generation to be like me, because if we don't do anything to address the challenges that affect us, what can I say when a young person, tries to go into my home? Like, I should have done more to fight for you. But so that's that community connection. I think the personal connection really happened all around the same time when I first started working in South Carolina as a civil rights attorney. I lost my nephew October 13th of 2013, October 11th of 2013. And, I just started that job 2 weeks, and that was breaker. That really broke me. I had just been back in the country for probably about a year and a few months, and he was born when I came home in March of 2011. He was born. My grandmother had just died, and I came home just for my grandmother's funeral and to see him be born. And he didn't come out until I was in the airplane. So I literally delayed my flight and didn't get a chance to meet him when he was born. But when I came back in July of 2012, we were able to really hit it off. And, him and his older sister and his cousin, Rachel, those three very close to me. I took them everywhere, went anywhere with them. And part of that, was just, trying to raise up the next generation, raise them right, show them the right things. And he died at my family's house while I was on the phone with my then fiance, now wife. I was talking to her for 14 minutes and 52 seconds. And so for 15 minutes, when I gave him off to my sister, something was happening while I was in a room just talking in Spanish with my wife and was just tuned out. And his passing away was just, you really thought, things were over, and that, how do you get through that? But then I recognized that after not eating for a week and, just laying around for 2 weeks, et cetera, that, I don't want his life to be in vain, and that I was going to do everything I could to live not just a life for me, but a life for him, and really strive to do all the things that I want to do. And when I go places, sometimes I climb a mountain or something, I wear his t-shirt, and really strive to live a life that he would be proud of. So that's my personal spark, that I recognize that, I'm going to live for more than myself. And BJ was a very creative child, and, children are very open and honest. And I strive to be like that. I strive to be open. I strive to be honest. It's very hard dealing with Iowa nice people, but I strive to be forthcoming and always tap into my creative side. And so that's my personal spark story, is not living just for myself, but for my little nephew as well.
Thank you so much, Joshua, for sharing that really personal story. And I think it's something that I have perceived about you and all of the work that I've seen you doing in Des Moines, is that you are really dedicated to working to make it better for the generation that's getting raised up right now. Make sure that they are getting the opportunities. And so you work in the civil rights department, but you also do a lot of additional work to just encourage and mentor young people and to mentor people in the community to get involved. Do you want to say a little bit about some of that work that you're doing?
Well, right. As the Civil and Human Rights Department, we have the mission of investigating discrimination complaints and building mutual understanding and respect amongst all persons here in the city of Des Moines. In addition to doing those investigations, again, we have to really address the systemic portion. And one of the things that I've been striving to do is really do a lot of policy change. And we've done with Bridging the Gap. It's an initiative we have to really engage with the community, have community dialogues, and understand what we can do to address some of those concerns. Have been pretty effective. We got source of income as a protected class pass, which essentially means you cannot discriminate against someone because they use Section 8 funding funding or any other form of legal government programming. So as, for example, if you have Social Security disability and use that as funding, a person can't say, I can't accept that funding. It is legal tender under government, and so you have to accept that. We've also gotten cultural competency training as a policy that all government employees have to go through here in the city of Des Moines. We've also passed a policy where government agents cannot inquire about a person's immigration status unless inquired by law, to make immigrants and refugees feel safer here in the city. We've also got a grant program that's about to start up where we're giving $100,000 in grant funding to organizations that are really striving to address inequities and improve economic opportunity here in the city of Des Moines. And we've just done a number of things that we're trying to do. We're trying to get a workforce equity plan started that should be hopefully done in 2 years. We are working on a resident academy. So we're trying to really address those changes. And a lot of those things are about increasing economic opportunity, increasing housing opportunity, to be free of harassment from government employees. And that's so everyone can feel welcome. But in addition to policy change, we're also striving to shape hearts and minds. And through that, we do a lot of community engagement and training. One of the things we've done is our Breaking Bread, Building Bridges project, where with that project, we had strangers matched up to have dinner together over the course of a few months to see if they can find common ground despite their differences. So that was a really interesting project. We matched them up based on their differences.
And I know you just won an Emmy for that movie or documentary that was made with that community project. So obviously it was an amazing project, great work. And as a city employee, we've just gone through, all the library staff are in the process right now of going through the training for implicit bias. So yes, really great intensive training. One article you wrote and published on Medium, it's called A Better Way, 50 Action Items to Fight Against Racism in Your Community. These are 50 concrete things that anyone can do, so anyone can raise up and get involved and be part of the change that we want to see. And you give some really good concrete steps. The title of the article, I think, is related to a viral video that came out this summer at a protest in North Carolina. In that video, which many of our viewers may be familiar with, Curtis Hayes, who's a 35-year-old man who was out protesting, he encourages a 16-year-old boy to find a better way to change this racist system. You started your article with that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I like to write. It's probably one of my things that I should do more of. But, you know, I guess before I even state what inspired me or what sparked me to write the article is I see that nobody has a plan. Everybody, you know, we're out marching and protesting, but this movement is deeper than just protesting in the streets. I mean, it's about engaging. It's about getting in positions where you can make a change. And that's what our ancestors fought for. They did the protesting in the streets so we could get in the seats and actually change things. And, you know, one of the things I've noticed in a lot of the work that I do, because I do a lot of community engagement work, is, I mean, some people have gone to meetings saying, Mayor, we've come to you about this for 10 years. I'm like, really? 10 years? We ain't seen no change? Like, we got to have a game plan and we got to have an end game. And in the video, the 30-year-old gentleman is telling the 16-year-old who's beside a 45-year-old who's angry, saying, you know, this is what I was doing in the streets, marching and protesting. This is what he was doing in the streets, marching and protesting. Now you here. Like, there got to be a better way. And he's right. There has to be a better way. And so, but he puts it on the 16-year-old to say, you got to find it. And so, you know, and my thing is, if, you know, children typically follow the path of their parents, and they typically take up a lot of the habits of their community. So if this person doesn't get it as my community member, how is the 16-year-old supposed to get it? So through my engagement in community and understanding people, I decided I was just gonna write an article about the better way and really letting people know that, you know, all politics are local. You know, most people were out there protesting police brutality. Police are local government. And so I just really wanted to make a list on what you could do in your own local community to fight and improve the conditions that are taking place here in wherever you live here in the United States.
I read that article several months ago, and immediately after I read it, I got an opportunity to just jump in and do one of the suggestions in your list, which was, well, first, you should meet your city council reps, and you should start a neighborhood association and get involved in your community in that way so you can advocate. So I came across an article in the newspaper in my town that said, hey, come be a neighborhood ambassador. So without too much hesitation, I just dove right in and signed up to be an ambassador for my neighborhood. And so I'm just starting that process, but I'm going to get to know the city. So I thank you for that inspiration. Can you tell us about a couple of the other suggestions you made in that article that maybe someone can kind of start with?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head first. The first thing you got to do is know who your local representatives are in your community. A lot of people like to complain, oh man, what's Trump going to do about my potholes? Well, first of all, President Trump does not care about your potholes, just to be honest. So you have to know who your local people are to address concerns. Because if local government shut down tomorrow, there was a shutdown in federal government 2019. Most people didn't feel that. But if local government shut down, you feel it instantly. Police wouldn't respond to your 911 calls. The fire department wouldn't come if your house is on fire. The trash pile up. Issues with, dogs and cats and issues in the roads and the infrastructure. Nobody's going to respond to that. So you have to understand that most issues are local issues. And even with those local issues, when funding typically comes down from programming from the federal government, it moves to state and local. And then these locally elected representatives are people who decide what neighborhoods and what other programming that this funding is going to go to. And if they don't know who you are, then you can pretty much guarantee that you're probably not going to get that funding for your organization or your community. So you have to first, that's step number one, know who they are, build relationships with them, because it's relationships that change hearts and minds. Go to city council meetings and really join organizations. And those are the first 4 or 5 steps. And you have to do that if you're going to do the other ones, because you really have to be organized, and you really have to understand that organization is what moves things. Big Sean wrote a song, one man can change the world, but that's not really true. And that's one of the errors of how we teach history, is we talk about, George Washington, and we talk about Abraham Lincoln. Well, guess what? They never picked up a gun. George Washington, yes, he did, but they had armies. They had people behind them fighting. And Lincoln in particular, the Civil War didn't end until 187,000 persons of African descent joined the fight. And that's what freed. So we essentially freed ourselves. We talk about Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther King was part of an organization called the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that worked with the NAACP and worked with SNCC and worked with CORE and worked with Urban League to help strategize their strategies into integrating the South, as well as getting policies passed. So you have to understand who your leaders are, and you have to be organized. Now in that, once you do those basic things, there's a number of things you can do. And it's really hard for me to say, pick one, because you have to look and really, and I'll tell you this, because there are, 55 other things to do, and it's bigger than the vote, because this is really about being civically engaged and being on even when it hurts, because a lot of people, they complain about the issues, but they're too busy watching Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus, and going out to eat all the time to really actually address it. And you have to, and I'm not saying those things aren't important. You do need downtime. You do need self-care. You do need time for self-reflection, but you also have to be civically engaged to change things. So I'm not going to really say which ones you should pick. I would really say, once you're organized with a neighborhood association, if you have one, if you don't have one, creating your own organization or working with other local grassroots organizations, dialogue and really understand what are the issues that are affecting my community most, and what can we do to address them? Some of those answers may be in the article, A Better Way, 50 plus action items to fight against racism in your community. Other things are not. There are about 9 other things I need to update and add to this article. There's so many things that could happen. But you first have to understand who your leaders are, and you have to be organized and build relationships with them to address those issues. So I can't really pick the rest. I really just say, if your local leaders are not addressing your issues, understand that local government, most people don't vote in local government elections. The turnout is very poor, in the teens, and sometimes lower than that in some areas. So if you're not getting the issues passed that you need, you may either want to run for local office yourself or promote someone else to run for local office wherever you are in the world. So it's really hard for me to pick the other ones. I'm big on education. I'll just say this, for me, education has its own section. And for me, I think we need to be teaching practical, student-directed education, where we're actually teaching them to address the challenges in their community. We have issues with, global warming. We have issues with houselessness. We have issues with a plastic crisis. We're dealing with people aren't being, taught history properly, and kids, they don't even teach them how to cook anymore. Right? We got to teach the practical, and we got to teach them how to, survive in a capitalist society, teaching them about property ownership, stocks and bonds, etc. I really believe that those are the fundamentals to really thrive in a community. So I'm big on the education section. If I had to pick a favorite section, really about helping the next generation. But there's a ton of things. I tell people to read it, kind of figure out what really moves them and what moves other members of their community, and go for it.
We will link that article in the description or comments below this video. Do you have anything else that you want to add about anything that we've talked about, or anything else?
I would just say this. This is called Spark Stories. So you're really trying to find what moves you. And I would say this, there's 2 things. Number one, I really believe in understanding self. You really can't serve others till you understand who you are. And one of the things that's really helped me is to really dig back and dig deep. A lot of times, all of us have a seed of expression inside of us that's just dying to get out. When you're confused about life and where to go, you have to just remove all of the layers that people piled up on you about what you should do, and really just get back to who am I as a person. For me, if you really want to reflect on who you are as a person, just go back to when you were a kid. What were those things that you loved to do that your mother and your father or your guardian had to pull you away from? And those things that you would do and find yourself doing by yourself. Of course, unfortunately, a lot of those things, as I moved into middle school, they called me a nerd for, so I dropped a lot of them. So I had to go back and find my way. And I really think that people should do that more, because I think a lot of times we're so obsessed with getting a job that we really don't know who we are, and we're miserable in these jobs. And sometimes we're miserable in these relationships. If I get this person, and this person will make me happy, and you realize, no, that's not it, because you have to find who you are. So I really say, if you really want to find your spark, peel back those layers and find out, who was I before the world put their hands on me and tried to shape me into something that they told me I should be. And find out what that spark is. And I think that's important for you, because once you find that seed of expression, you're able to self-actualize and be everything that you have inside of you, the talents, the skills, and the passions. Because again, when I started doing this work in civil human rights, first in South Carolina, now here, the job was just to investigate cases. But I recognized that I had to do more than that. And what I did was I utilized my creative talents and passions to produce a documentary and to do projects with community dialogue, and to go out and make speeches about history and the impact of that. And those are things out of my personal toolkit that I've added to the job, not the job is added to me. So you can always add things to your job if your boss so allows. I've been fortunate enough for that, but add those things so that you can actually transform your community, self-actualize and transcend, as you taught me, transcend self into to better serve the community. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, all of us have a talent and a passion inside of us that can better society. But if you're just focused on getting a paycheck, you're going to die full of regrets. And they said, most dreams are found in the graveyard. I mean, $1 billion ideas that were never tapped into that could really benefit and move society. So I would say as we move into 2021, if anything, life isn't promised to you, so we got to throw off the chains and take some risk in 2021, but not individual risks that can benefit everyone. Because if anything, society has taught us that everything is interconnected. What happens in Wuhan, China, could be knocking at your door today. And so we have to think beyond self and work to improve society for everyone.
Thank you so much for talking with me, not once, but twice. This is actually the second time we've had this Spark conversation. We went in a completely different direction this time, but because of technology, all we got for the first one was the audio. So we'll post that as well and link to it. We're also going to post your book list that you shared with us about some of the books that have inspired you. So thank you so much for contributing your time to this project and helping people in the community to grow.
All right. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Thanks.